What's up, Celtics Nation? Before we dive into today's breaking news, there's no way I could start this show without giving a massive shout out to all of you out there celebrating 617 Day. This is more than just a number for folks around Boston. This is a day that brings back some of the best memories for Celtics fans. Just 1 year ago, we were all celebrating as the Boston Celtics brought home that long-awaited Larry O'Brien trophy, an entire city and entire fan base celebrating together, finally watching the team lift that banner up into the rafters once again. And if we go back even further, 17 years ago to be exact, it was the era of Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, and the whole 2008 squad that delivered the 17th championship in franchise history. Those memories, man, they don't fade. And that brings me to the question of the day for all of you watching. If we could somehow pit that 2008 Celtics championship roster against last year's title-winning team and they played a full 7-game series, who do you think would come out on top? Would it be the grit and toughness of that '08 squad with their legendary defense and veteran leadership, or would it be the depth, athleticism, and versatility of the 2020 for Celtics? Hit the comments section and let me know your take, because I know Celtics fans always have strong opinions on this kind of matchup. Now let's get into today's show, because we've got a double shot of major Celtics news that we need to break down. First, there's a brand new report floating around that Kevin Durant wanted to be traded to Boston. Yeah, you heard that right. Kevin Durant apparently had Boston on his preferred destination list. And then after that, we're going to take a closer look at the Celtics' free agency situation, particularly focusing on whether or not the team will be able to bring back Luke Kornet and Al Horford for next season. Can Boston keep at least one of their big men? We'll get into all the angles. But let's start with the Kevin Durant story, because this one caught a lot of people off guard. According to a new report from Kevin O'Connor at Yahoo Sports, there was real interest from Durant's camp in landing with either the Celtics or the Knicks. Now let's be real, hearing Durant linked to Boston again just opens up old wounds for a lot of fans. Some of you might remember back in 2016, I personally spent the entire 4th of July glued to my phone refreshing Twitter every 2 seconds, hoping to see a Kevin Durant signs with Boston headline pop up. It's almost embarrassing how obsessed I was that day, sitting on my basement floor just waiting for the notification. But as we all know, that didn't happen. The Warriors swooped in with their Hamptons 5-pitch and KD took his talents to Golden State, collecting the championships along the way. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, back in 2022, there were even more serious talks about the Celtics making a move for Durant. Reports surfaced saying Brad Stevens was willing to part with both Jaylen Brown and Derek White in a deal to bring KD to Boston. That would have been a blockbuster, no doubt about it. But the Brooklyn Nets shut it down, said no to the package, and Durant stayed put at the time. Looking back now, you could argue Brooklyn should have taken that deal, considering how things eventually played out. Now here we are again in 2025, and Durant is back in the trade rumor mill. Word is a deal is likely to go down in the next few days, but from everything we're hearing, it's extremely unlikely that Durant ends up wearing green. Let's talk about why that is. First off, for Boston to even entertain this kind of trade, Jaylen Brown would almost certainly have to be included in the package. And considering both the Celtics and the Suns are currently sitting above the NBA's new second apron, making a one-for-one deal work financially would be next to impossible. The NBA's new collective bargaining agreement has made these types of trades incredibly tricky. Any deal like this would require the exact dollar amounts going back and forth. And realistically, you'd need a third team involved to balance the numbers. Beyond just the money side of things, there's also the fact that the market value for Durant has dropped a bit. Teams aren't lining up to give up superstar-level assets for KD at this point in his career, especially given his age, injury history, and that massive contract. The latest odds suggest that the Miami Heat and the Houston Rockets are currently the frontrunners in the Durant sweepstakes, with the San Antonio Spurs also lurking as a possible destination. The Heat are sitting at the top, the Rockets close behind, then the Spurs, followed by the Timberwolves, and then way behind the Toronto Raptors as a dark horse. Now, does Boston have any chance of being involved in this trade in any way? Not necessarily to land Durant, but maybe as a third team to help facilitate a deal. That's where things get a little more interesting. Given the Celtics need to shed some salary this offseason, there's a scenario where they could jump in and help move pieces around to help another team land Durant, while also addressing some of their own financial flexibility needs. Rob mentioned that Boston might use this opportunity to move some secondary pieces and create some breathing room under the salary cap. but here's where it gets delicate. If Durant ends up going to Miami, would Brad Stevens really want to help the Heat become even more of a threat in the Eastern Conference? Probably not. Helping a direct rival like Miami land a player of Durant's caliber seems like the last thing Boston would want to do. But if there's a scenario where the Celtics could benefit long-term, you can never rule anything out entirely. Then there's another layer to this. Jake Fisher from Yahoo Sports recently reported that the Phoenix Suns have done some background work on Kristaps Porzingis as well as Andrew Wiggins. That's interesting for a couple of reasons. First, if Phoenix is serious about Porzingis, it could open the door for Boston to get involved in a multi-team trade scenario. But again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The numbers make this incredibly complicated. I actually ran a few trade scenarios through Fansided's trade machine, and one potential deal I mocked up would have sent around $58 million in salary to Phoenix and brought back around $54 million from Durant's side. But even then, the Suns can't aggregate salaries right now because they're a second apron team. That makes any Porzingis deal nearly impossible as part of a Durant trade to Miami. Maybe somewhere down the line, if Phoenix clears space and drops below the second apron, that could become more realistic, but for now it's not something that's likely to happen. That being said, let's not entirely close the book on the Celtics being involved somehow. If Phoenix ends up under the second apron after a Durant trade, Boston might look at some of the Suns' contracts and see potential fits. Two names that stand out in that case are Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. Both guys are on 3-year deals, both making decent money. That could help Boston get some salary relief while still bringing in valuable rotation players. Grayson Allen is set to make around $17 million next season, while Royce O'Neal is on the books for just over $10 million. If Boston decides to get involved later in the offseason after things settle down and teams adjust post-Durant trade, this could be something worth keeping an eye on. But let's pivot now to something that hits even closer to home: free agency and the futures of Luke Kornet and Al Horford, two key role players from last season's championship run. Both now unrestricted free agents, both with uncertain futures in Boston. Michael Scotto from Hoopshype recently dropped a report touching on this exact topic, and it's got Celtics fans talking. Starting with Al Horford, it seems that several high-level playoff contenders are keeping a close watch on him, just in case he decides to leave Boston. Now here's the thing: with Jason Tatum expected to miss significant time next season, the Celtics are already bracing for a bit of a step back, both on the court and financially. They're in a tight spot with their salary cap situation, and that could impact what they're able to offer Horford moving forward. But despite all that, the general vibe around the league and from people close to Horford is that he plans to keep playing next season. Where he plays, though, that's the big question. Scotto didn't specify whether Horford is leaning toward staying in Boston or exploring new opportunities. And honestly, from where I'm sitting, I just can't imagine Al wearing another jersey. At this stage of his career, the guy's resume is already stamped. Two-time NCAA champion at Florida, multiple NBA All-Star appearances, and now finally an NBA champion with the Celtics. What more does he really need to prove? But then again, I'm not Al Horford. If he feels like there's still unfinished business or new challenges out there, he's earned the right to chase whatever he wants. That said, I truly believe Horford's heart is in Boston. Yeah, he left for Philadelphia a few years back, but let's be real, that was about the $100 million contract he was offered at the time. And even then, it wasn't long before he found his way back to Boston thanks to that trade that sent Kemba Walker packing. Ever since then, he's been a key piece of this team, both on and off the floor. Even this past postseason, at 39 years old, the guy was logging 30+ minutes a night and hitting 40% of his shots from deep. That's not the kind of production you typically get from a player his age, especially in the playoffs when the games matter most. So yeah, I'm really hoping Boston finds a way to bring him back.